This is the first of two videos capturing a summer trip to New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado to escape the heat and humidity that had been dominating midsummer weather in Arkansas. It was time to temporarily relocate to cooler climes. We began the arduous process of getting ready to travel a couple days before departure. I was hindered by a vicious intestinal bug, forcing a close relationship with the facilities. The nasty bug continued to dominate my activities on the day before departure, but Kay finished packing and worked to reorganize the potted plants and set up an irrigation system for them. And after waiting to the last minute as usual, I packed fly fishing gear, camera equipment, and other electronics and clothes. Together, we packed the car. A few minutes were squeezed into an otherwise busy day to photograph hummingbirds. We departed home in Arkansas early on a Saturday morning, driving north to Morrilton, Arkansas, where we stopped for breakfast at McDonald's. Then it was on I-40 west through Arkansas, across much of Oklahoma, through the panhandle of Texas, and into eastern New Mexico. It is always interesting to observe the changing topography. Past Amarillo and about 30 miles from New Mexico, the topography changed dramatically from rolling hills to high plains with arroyos, small canyons, and rock outcroppings. The day's travel ended at Tucumcari, New Mexico, after driving some 700 miles. At Tucumcari, we overnighted in the historic Route 66 motel. It is a mid-century modern hotel that is similar in style and atmosphere to hotels and homes designed by Mies van der Rohe, Joseph Eichler, and Oscar Niemeyer. Built in 1963, both the exterior and interior are more than a little reminiscent of California modern, a style that was popular until the latter 60s. It was clean, and we would stay there again. Dinner was at the renowned Dale's Restaurant, which has served locals and travelers along Route 66 in Tucumcari, New Mexico for more than 60 years. The food was good and reasonably priced. We were awake early, having switched time zones when crossing into New Mexico. We brought coffee beans, grinder, and a French press from home, making a great home brew for the road. After stowing overnight items, we continued west from Tucumcari on I-40. At Albuquerque, we left the interstate in favor of U.S. Highway 550 northwest to Bloomfield, New Mexico, where we stopped for a picnic lunch on the banks of the San Juan River. From there, it was off through Farmington to Shiprock, New Mexico, where we stopped briefly for photographs. Shiprock is a monadnock rising nearly 1,583 feet above the high desert plain of the Navajo Nation in San Juan County, New Mexico. Its peak is 7,177 feet above sea level. Shiprock is a point of interest for rock climbers and photographers and has been featured in several film productions and novels. It is the most prominent landmark in northwestern New Mexico. In 1975, Shiprock was designated as a National Natural Landmark by the National Park Service. From Shiprock, we traveled northwest, crossing into Colorado, and then north and west into Utah. Driving northward through Monticello, Utah, the topography and scenery changed dramatically with the appearance of numerous monoliths such as Church Rock. Church Rock is a three-tiered solitary column of sandstone in southern Utah along the eastern side of U.S. Route 191 north of Monticello. There is a 16 by 24 foot opening chiseled slightly into the rock. Interestingly, we were at a traffic stop there as the highway had just opened after being temporarily closed due to flash flooding. After the brief delay and just past Church Rock, Wilson's Arch appeared roadside east. The structure is a natural sandstone arch just off U.S. Route 191, some 24 miles south of Moab. It has a span of 91 feet and height of 46 feet. The elevation of Wilson's Arch is about 6,150 feet. Traveling further northward, we stopped in Moab, our intermediate destination, for a couple of days.
After checking into our motel and grabbing a takeaway bite to eat, we drove north and then south-southwest to the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands National Park. Donald visited there briefly in the mid-1970s, but did not take enough time to smell the roses or take many photographs. I had never been there. At Grandview Point Overlook, the majesty of the canyons spread to the horizon. Grandview Point is the southernmost spot on the Canyonlands High Mesa, the island in the sky. This whole area of the mesa has a 1,000-foot vertical wall, and the trails go right up to the edge. Just a little gust of wind and camper equipment and photographer are over the edge. Laid out below the Grandview Point is a complex network of canyons carved by the converging Colorado and Green Rivers. From Grandview Point, we began chasing the sunset despite very cloudy conditions. Our final stop was the Orange Cliffs overlook, but we were unable to see the sunset after all.
After a fair night's sleep, mid-morning saw us off to Dead Horse Point State Park. Utah's Dead Horse Point State Park features a dramatic overlook of the Colorado River 2,000 feet below and Canyonlands National Park to the side. It is most famous for its view of the Gooseneck Bend of the Colorado River, a much sought-after photographic icon. The park covers 5,362 acres of high desert at an altitude of 5,900 feet. The legend of Dead Horse Point originates around the turn of the 19th century when cowboys would round up the wild mustangs that roamed the mesa. It is said a herd was driven down the neck of the peninsula, its sheer cliffs forming a natural corral, and the 30-foot wide entrance was fenced off with branches and brush. For reasons unknown, the herd was left or forgotten. After a period of time with no food or water, they succumbed to the harsh desert elements with the Colorado River in view 2,000 feet below. It is rumored those horses can be seen and heard still roaming the area. After the long-awaited photograph of the Gooseneck Bend described above, we returned to the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands National Park, just a few minutes away. Our goal was to photograph Mesa Arch, the crown jewel of Canyonlands National Park. This pothole arch on the eastern edge of the Island in the Sky Mesa, perched at the edge of a cliff with views of canyons, Monster Tower, Washerwoman Arch, Airport Tower, and the LaSalle Mountains in the distance. Sunrise is the ideal time to photograph Mesa Arch, but the crowd of photographers can be overwhelming. Even at midday, the site was crowded, mostly by a large family group of about 12.5 people. It seemed that they took forever for them to pose singularly and in groups. We have seen groups like this before in other national parks, traveling in 2 or 3 vans. Anyway, we waited our time and snapped a couple of photos. After a few more photos of the canyons below, we returned to the motel for the afternoon. Later in the afternoon, we did a quick driving tour of Arches National Park. It was Kay's second visit and my third. You have to reserve a time slot to visit. We did not have any particular goals in mind, just sightseeing. That turned out to be a good thing as a storm rolled in and it rained on us most of the time we were there. We did manage to get a few photos between rainstorms. Arches National Park Scenic Drive is the main road that runs through the park. The scenic drive through the Arches is approximately 19 miles long one way. The majority of the top sites in the park are located either right along the scenic drive or just a short walk or hike from the road. At Courthouse Towers Viewpoint, we saw numerous formations, including 3 gossips. We saw balanced rock right from the parking lot. Double arch, where 2 giant arches share the same foundation. Double arch is where 2 giant arches share the same foundation. The taller of the 2 arches is the tallest in the park at 112 feet high, and the double arch is the second longest arch in Arches National Park. And though the northern window arch provides a great view of Turret Arch, we did not make the hike because of ominous weather. Either because of the late hour, or the weather, or both, there was not much traffic with which to contend as we made our way back to the motel in Moab to prepare for our next morning's departure.
Neither of us had been to Dead Horse Point State Park. I had never been to Canyonlands National Park, and we would never miss a visit to nearby Arches National Park. This summer hiatus from the hot, clammy weather of the Mid-South took us to the American Southwest Desert and mountains of Colorado. This was the first of 2 videos chronicling the first few days of the trip, including visits to a national monument, 2 national parks, a state park, and several interesting sights along the way. While our main intent was to stay in the Colorado mountains near Creed for a few weeks, the magnetic attraction of southeastern Utah was overwhelming. An almost 3-day visit to this area was necessary prior to arriving at the Colorado cabin.
Thank you for watching. Prayers for a great week. Goodbye for now, and connect with us again next week.